everyone. I'm going to share an excerpt from last Monday's Gaslit Nation Salon. If you want to join the conversation, come join us at patreon.com/gaslit. That's patreon.com/gaslit. We have the Zoom posted there for our listeners. Come join, shape the show, share what's happening in your neck of the woods, and be part of our resilience community that's going to plant powerful seeds of hope and change this year, because a better world is possible. And we have no choice but to make it and build it ourselves, because our institutions have failed us, as Gaslit Nation has warned since the start of our show many years ago. And now it is up to us. No one is coming to save us but us. Welcome to the January 26, 2026 Gaslit Nation Salon. I had an incredible run-in on Friday morning. I was taking my daughter to her medical appointment, and we stopped off in a coffee shop so I could buy her hot chocolate. And then, just like the book, if you give a mouse a cookie, they're going to want milk. My daughter then wanted orange juice, so I was waiting in line to get her orange juice, and I look over and I think, is that Sia Weaver? Sia Weaver is Mayor Mamdani's director of tenants' rights. And in the news here in New York City, she's absolutely under fire by the far-right press, the New York Post, Fox News, because she's going after the deeply corrupt real estate industry here in New York City that gave rise to Fred Trump and his trust fund, six-time bankrupt trust fund kid, convicted felon Donald Trump. This is an extremely powerful industry that helped get a con man elected president, and Sia Weaver is going after it. So, of course, she's paying the price and is being massively harassed right now. And she's sitting there being interviewed by a journalist, and I'm like, oh my God, that's Sia Weaver. And so, of course, me being me, when my daughter and I were on the way out, we crash the interview because my daughter's been freaking out over Trump. We don't say his name at home. Like, we're very careful. I know I do Gaslit Nation. I live and breathe this stuff. But when we're all finished here at the salon, I go cook dinner. I put on some nice music and I focus on the kids, the playground gossip, all that stuff, right? I go into mom raising my kids in a bucolic little bubble mode because I'm trying to protect them and give them some moments of peace and happiness so they have that emotional security to be ready for what comes next, right? When they're older and a point comes where I can't do that any longer. So we don't say the T word. We don't even play the news when they're around if we can help it. And when I ask her, I'm like, why are you afraid of the dark? Why are you afraid of this? Like, what the first thing she says out of her mouth always is Trump. Always Trump. What is she afraid of? She's afraid of Trump. So I said to Sia Weaver, I show my daughter pictures, videos of Mamdani, your great administration, and how excited we are. And I keep telling her it's people like you that are going to protect us from Trump. And so I introduced my daughter to Sia Weaver as a real life superhero. And so we took a photo together, and the journalist was like taking this all in, like me crashing this interview. And I said to Sia, I told her about Gaslit Nation. She'd heard of the show before. And I said, go listen to our episode on Red Vienna. We did a whole episode on how the social democracy paradise of Vienna in the interwar period. I didn't say all this in length. I wasn't like, I'm going to now podcast for you, but I just said, go look up Red Vienna. Go look up Red Vienna. You have to obviously make everyone's lives better, but then you have to brace for impact. You have to be a linebacker now. Those are the words I used. You have to be a linebacker now. Go look up Red Vienna. And Gaslit Nation listeners know the story of Red Vienna is, of course, the success in the interwar period of Vienna being a social democracy paradise. They had publicly supported housing, kindergartens, libraries, all of it. And they paid for this with a sales tax on luxury goods like champagne and servants and racehorses. And the oligarchs, the business elite, hated them. So they used fascism. They shut down democracy, and they did to Red Vienna what Trump is now doing to progressive success story, Minnesota. And yes, they have that whole scandal, that 250 or whatever $1 million fraud case. Yes, it's a real scandal that needs justice, needs accountability, needs transparency. But those cases happen probably more than we know, certainly in these Republican-led states like Louisiana. So I put Red Vienna on Sia's radar. And I felt very good about taking that photo with her. And I felt very good doing it in front of a journalist to remind the media that this is an obvious disinformation campaign by the oligarch-owned press who are trying to fool a bunch of poor people in order to keep them poor and avoid paying more in taxes. So that was a crazy run-in New York City that I couldn't wait to share with you. Second run-in, are you ready for this? A fancy friend of mine had an extra ticket to a fancy event, and so I went along, and it was a fancy evening, the kind that I don't do in New York normally. And I felt like Cinderella, and I was laughing. I was being that loud, laughing woman. And there was a handsome, dapper gentleman who was all up in my orbit. He and I became best friends. We went from being strangers to best friends. We exchanged phone numbers. He loves the opera, and we're going to get a booth at the opera. We're making vacation plans together. We're going to move in with each other. Like, it was that kind of night. And we start talking about opera and how one of the Wagners, like Wagner was Hitler's favorite composer. And that's also why the Russian mercenaries who are invading Ukraine, they call their unit Wagner, 'cause after Hitler's favorite composer. And so we're discussing how one of Wagner's family members snuck paper into prison so that Hitler could write Mein Kampf in prison. I did not know that. And as we got on the topic of Hitler, someone in our group must have casually made a reference to Trump. And next thing you know, our dapper gentleman, my new BFF, comes out gradually, little by little, delicately at first. But as the conversation goes on, it's very clear he's a full-blown MAGA enthusiast. He and his rich friends claim they bought out an entire theater to watch the Melania movie. So-called, Biden and its open borders, letting all of these illegal aliens in. Trump has to now go to extreme measures to take them out. Don't you know? Those protesters breaking the law. They shouldn't be breaking the law. They won't get killed. The thing I realized, and we all know this from all the conversations we've had, right, with each other in our community, one of the great advantages these Nazis have is they're so out of touch with reality that you stand there watching them because you're morbidly fascinated. And you're just looking at them and you're thinking, what was your childhood like? Like what news sources do you really take in? Like, what are you and your friends like when no one's watching? And you're just so stunned by their force field of an alternative reality that you're just like looking at them. So I had to do a quick grounding exercise in the moment to snap myself out of that morbid fascination. And I had to just think to myself, like, go, like, your Gaslit Nation, go, you can do this. And I just start citing everything very calmly, just like, presenting facts, being non-emotional. And, I explained last year, 2025 was the deadliest year on record for U.S. immigration deaths. So far in 2026, we're on track to far surpass that. If you believe in immigration, there must be a way to do it without casually murdering U.S. citizens in the street, without separating families of children as young as 2 and 5. There must be a way to do it that is sane and logical and doesn't just mass traumatize families and entire communities. I just went through it like very, very, I was a lot more articulate than I'm being now because I've had a long day of other interviews, but I just stuck to the facts. And he said something really funny. He was like, well, do you know how hard it is for me being a gay man and a Republican? I'm like, Peter Thiel's a Republican. Hitler had gay men to help him come to power. There was one of those Nazi officers, Rome, was always in the El Dorado gay club in Berlin. And he looked at me, he's like, you're calling me a Nazi? I'm like, yeah, I'm calling you a Nazi. If you support what they did to Renee Good, if you support all of the gulags that they're building in El Salvador, absolutely. If you support people being kidnapped and arrested without due process, that's what the Nazis supported. And look at the rhetoric that Trump uses, calling the press a lying press, dehumanizing them. It was extraordinary because it very much was Dorothy Thompson's iconic essay from 1941 called Who Goes Nazi? How to look around you at your next dinner party and tell who among you would go Nazi in a crisis. I lived the essay, Who Goes Nazi? I lived this. That's what the evening felt like. If you were to adapt that essay into a short film, that's what the night was like. And what makes it even weirder is that I just got commissioned by a wonderful producer in the UK to do another draft of my Dorothy Thompson screenplay. So do you understand this evening happened? And the very next day, the very next morning, I had to work on the Dorothy Thompson screenplay. That underlines what I truly believe with all my heart. And it is this: our minds are the sun. And whatever you focus your mind on, it will grow. 100%. Whatever you focus your mind on, it will grow. Whatever you want to call that, the laws of attraction, it's just common sense. Whatever you focus on, it will grow. And one conversation I had with Agnieszka Holland, the director of Mr. Jones, she said the reason why she signed up to do my film after she was doing House of Cards is because she was tired of this American culture that for decades was glamorizing these anti-heroes as heroes. Like basically all of mainstream culture, film and TV was gangsterism in some way, shape, or form, whether it was a politician or actual criminals in the street, is this glorification of criminals. And so she wanted to do a film that brought back heroes, to bring into the culture heroes, to manifest heroes. And so she would say, it's no surprise we got Donald Trump. Look at what the films and TV have been for decades. They've all been about Donald Trump. So she was like, if we want to live in a society with heroes, then we have to create culture around heroes. That's why we made our film. I'm very careful in the projects that I choose. Every creative act, whatever that creative act is, you could be a business person creating a company, you could be creating a nonprofit, you can be creating a song. Every single creative act, you're manifesting. You are manifesting. I don't care how you feel about that word. It's just the reality of it. When you're focused on that energy, you're attracting that energy. The mind is the sun. So whatever you focus on, it grows. And I had a similar situation in last summer. I was wrapping up a screenplay about my father-in-law, who spent 6 years as a political prisoner in a communist prison in Romania for daring to lead a protest against the regime in solidarity with the Hungarian uprising next door. This was in 1956, when student and worker-led marches were shaking the Iron Curtain. And I was working on that screenplay one morning when we were visiting my in-laws in Paris. This was right smack in the middle of August when Paris shuts down. It was a Friday in August. It was a holiday, a national holiday. It was the Lady of Censure, or whatever that phrase is. Basically, the very Catholic French, they celebrate the day that Mary, the mother, went up into heaven. So it was that day. And I happened to get stuck in my in-laws' elevator in their building. And if you've ever been to France, those elevators are teeny tiny, teeny tiny. And I got stuck in her elevator with my 3-year-old right smack in the middle of August with everything shut down. And I was confined in there. And I was thinking, Jesus Christ, I just worked on a screenplay of my father-in-law being trapped in solitary confinement. And here I am confined in an elevator. Anyway, so that's just a little side note. But my larger story is, who goes Nazis is real. I lived it. We all live it. Even being in New York City, there's a lot more of them than you might expect. And they are very happy with what Trump is doing. They think it's fantastic. They think that the people that are being murdered deserved it. And they don't like to be bullied. He very clearly felt that my questioning, my facts, and I was calm. I was very calm. I was very calm. I was like this. And he even at one point, like, did a double take. Like, did you just call me a Nazi? I'm like, well, like I was very relaxed in doing it. And you could just see on his face, like, they see us as the bullies because they need to hold on to that victim narrative. Think of what I'm saying as more of like a diary of living through this time that we're in. And obviously, I have this guy's cell phone number and I wanted to send him things like, look what they just did to Alex Preddy. But my friends were like, don't even go near him. He's American Psycho. He's Patrick Bateman. Like, don't even go, you know. So that's where we are.